Released in 1997, and with Fincher finally in his stride after the success of Seven, the game is something of a hidden gem in the Fincher filmography. Much released to a success, both critical and commercial on its release, it has since, for whatever reason, been kind of forgotten by a lot of audiences as they focus on more prominent pictures in this filmography, such as the aforementioned Seven, Fight Club, and The Social Network, to name but a few. But here we see Fincher once again tapping into the same sort of vein that we saw with Seven, if perhaps not going as dark, as Michael Douglas stars as the wealthy investment banker, given a very unique gift by his brother. What follows is one of the most twisting and perhaps one of the more inventive thrillers of the 90s, and certainly marked out Douglas and Penn as not only having great on-screen chemistry, but saw both of them playing to their strengths, with Fincher once again showing himself a master of cinematography and screening. I'm Norwood.
I'm Kim.
And you're listening to Movies and Tea. Let's take it to the booth. Tonight we're talking about The Game from 1997, and tonight we're also joined by a guest who regular listeners of the show will be already familiar with. It, of course, gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the show, Norman.
Thank you. Great to be back again.
Obviously, as we said, tonight we're talking about The Game, probably one of the more overlooked titles on the Fincher filmography. And, I mean, just opening thoughts on this one, was this a first-time watch for anyone, or?
No, I've seen it a couple times before.
Yeah, no, I saw it, like, when it was first released, I think, and I don't remember anything, so this was, like, a watch from, like, the second watch from 1,000 years ago that I don't remember anymore, so it felt like a first watch, though.
Yeah. I said for myself, it's been a few years since I've seen this film last, and I think it's one of those films that actually benefits if you put some distance between viewings on it, because it's so much of the fun is in the mystery and watching it be unraveled, especially with a director like Fincher, because he's not the sort of director who underlines every particular clue and object for the audiences. He doesn't play down to his audiences. He just presents things, and it's up to the audience to find the clues and follow the path themselves. And I think when you're dealing with a film like The Game, which is so frustrating when it came out, the fact that you're like, well, what's the game? And no one could give you like a straight answer, and then you watch the film and you realize, oh, why? We can't give you a straight answer because it pretty much gives away the film. So we will just say now, spoilers ahead if you've not seen it. But obviously with this film, it sees him working with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn. You okay there, no one?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just getting weird noises there. I mean, for myself, I love seeing Michael Douglas play men of power. Have you sort of fans of Michael Douglas or Sean Penn? I mean, for myself, Sean Penn I can sort of give or take. I'm not really a fan either way.
So Norman here. I'm a big fan of both of theirs. On this watch, I was thinking a lot of his Gordon Gekko character in Wall Street as well. Each character is like one is the East Coast version, one is the West Coast version. So basically the same guy. So I do like when he's in that position of power a lot.
Yeah, and we've certainly seen him play the sort of roles many times over the past. I mean, we've obviously seen in Wall Street. We saw it in, like in Traffic, and again, even in like Falling Down. He's always like, for some reason, he started off with playing like this devilish rogue when we like watching things such like Jewel of the Nile and Romance in the Stone, and then as he got older, he's like matured into playing these like wealthy investment banker types, and it's like been this flawless evolution of his path as an actor, and I think it's just been fantastic to see him really just get better with age, which is something that we don't often get to say about actors or directors for that matter. So, but Kim, what about yourself? Where do you sort of lie on these actors?
I mean, I definitely watch Michael Douglas a lot more than I watch Sean Penn.
Yep.
But I mean, Michael Douglas, I remembered him being like really like in a lot of movies that I watched in, I don't know, the 90s or something. And then I remember like picturing him as this kind of like wealthy man, like in power all the time. But then a few years ago when I first started blogging, people were like, "Oh, you have to watch him in like Jewel of the Nile and Romancing the Stone or something." And then I was like, "Whoa, this is a different side." So I guess I kind of watched his movies in reverse.
Yeah.
But I mean, Michael Douglas is kind of like he really does fit into like definitely like while I did like Jewel of the Nile and Romancing the Stone, don't get me wrong on that, but I think that he really fits into that whole image of the investment banker, like a wealthy man and a man of power and that sort of thing. He really like captures that role really, really well.
Yeah, and I mean certainly here he's playing Nicholas Van Orton, who's, let me see, he's pretty much lives this sort of like Scrooge lifestyle. He potters around his big old mansion that he inherited from his father. He's haunted at the same time by the suicide of his father on his birthday, and now he's approaching his 48th birthday, which is the same age that his father committed suicide. He's sort of like haunted by those same ghosts again. At the same time, he's got the Black Sheep brother, here played by Sean Penn, who has basically been off swanning it out in exotic places of the world and decides to show up for his brother's birthday, offering him this gift of a game with the Consumer Recreation Services, or CRS, which Conrad basically says will change his life. And from here, we're really sort of, the wheels are put in motion for this whole breaking down of a character as he's sort of forced to go through different sort of trials to try and find out who exactly is behind the game. But yeah, I mean, it's here he's playing that man of power. I mean, he passes around in $44,000 shoes. He's cruises around in limousines, and he constantly has things like waiting on him and has people who respect him. And when he obviously first goes to the CRS and he's subjected to all those trials, it's really so interesting the fact that here's like the first time he's not in control. Every other time we see him up until this point, he's always in control. He's always got people listening to him. So the actual trials he's going through at CRS, what did we sort of feel about that? Because I felt that a lot of it was just a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it didn't actually matter half of the responses he was giving.
I don't know.
Norman here, I thought it was very important because it used that to tailor what they're going to do in the game and how much stress he can take. So especially the medical part, I think that's very important. The psychological part's important. I think that's how they gleaned about his father. And if you notice, the first kind of thing that kind of struck me is when he comes home and finds the clown, you notice it's kind of lying in the exact same spot where his dad fell.
Yeah.
To kind of set the psychological tone early on. So I did feel that those testing was important and played a major role in how they're going to tailor the game to him.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like it definitely matters because they're testing on all these things, and I think the test purpose is more to give you that feeling that this game is going to be stressful. It's going to put him out of control, and it tests all his it's just kind of like a stress test, like just how much can he take physically and psychologically, and then they kind of build those parameters around this to customize it to him. Whereas like where he gets all this other information about, like exactly where the father died and all that stuff, I feel like obviously, the final twist at the end is there's obviously a big connection to Conrad, who obviously we know at this point was the one who gave him the gift and had gone through an experience like this as well.
Yeah, I also love the fact the interview is conducted by James Ribbon, who, I mean, himself, he's a character actor. He's been over like 100 different films. You've probably seen him like turn up in everything from like Carlito's Way, Independence Day, and Meet the Parents. He's constantly there in the background, so it kind of made sense the fact that here he turns up as this bit actor who the company hire to conduct this interview there. And the whole interview sequence, I just love that. His introduction there, and when he's like giving the test and Nicholas is there, it's sort of like, reading out some of these questions he's being forced to answer, and it's like, I feel shame when I masturbate, or I like to torture small animals. And it makes me wonder what sort of people they're getting in to do this game. Because obviously it's targeted at very sort of rich people, so it's a very exclusive service, especially since this company had the power to basically control anything that they want to sell this experience. So I was just sure that it was like they were just like a lot of the tests. The fact that they kept dragging on was just like seeing how far that they could push him and just see what would push his buttons. Really, the fact that they keep him, they say, "Oh, you're gonna be here for an hour," and then he's there for 4 hours, and the fact that they say, "No, we haven't been able to tailor the experience for you," after like wasting a whole day for him and stuff. So. So the mind games start pretty early on with this one, and as you said, Norman, the fact that the first clue that we have there is like the clown, which I have to say is kind of sick to say that you're playing on somebody's memories of the death of their parent and using it as the first sort of trigger in this game. So, do you think there's like a real sort of question of morals, or that we should really be questioning with the company?
No, I think this is a high-end thing. Like, as Tim was saying, this is at the elite and the rich and kind of the private school crowd who have been doing psychological games on themselves and their friends, probably going back from when they were all in boarding school or somewhere. So I think that's probably par for the course for that crowd. Skull and bones and all this type of secret stuff and playing on each other's worst fears. I'm sure a lot of their parents pushed them all the same way. So I think that the crowd they're going for is used to that type of thing and probably actually thrive on it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's kind of like the CRS is this position of it feels a lot like they're creating this experience because it's kind of for the elite, because the elite is always in power. And what this game does is kind of flips them around. It kind of changes the tune. Obviously, this is tailored towards, Nicholas Van Orton, right? But at the same time, you kind of have this feeling that maybe that's what they crave. It's a bit like, it's something that breaks out of this routine of their of their life, and it gives them this moment to reflect a lot on the things around them, and that's what the whole game's purpose was, and why it was like, why we see at the end, because during the whole process you kind of have this feeling of oh my goodness, this guy's just having like a really, really bad day where everything is going wrong and he's going on this like chase. But then it all turns around, and in the end it all comes to this kind of like life. It is this life altering experience for him.
Yeah, it's just as the game like goes on, and it's suddenly they start like faking emptying his bank accounts. They're shooting at him at one point, and it's sort of like, what experience are we selling here? Because we go to such extremes with this journey that we've found. Because from where we see Nicholas at the start, and as I said, he's the executive. He's the guy who's ruthlessly shutting down corporations because they're not making stock percentage. And by the time we get to the end of this game, and he's been entombed alive, he's been dumped in Mexico and forced to sell his last noteworthy possession so that he can get a taco and a bus ride home. It's sort of like, it makes me wonder, sort of like, wow, we were really, this could go really one of ways. Yes, it could be this life-changing experience for this guy, or it could just like completely psychologically break him. And we certainly, towards the end, we seem to be on that fine line of which way it's going to go. So I felt almost so bad for him, just what they put him through, like, especially towards the end of this game, because it's goes from being something kind of fun. It's sort of like, the waitress spills the drinks on the guy, and it's sort of like, I get the secret messages, so I have to like follow her, and we get the little chase sequence there, and all these sort of little fun things, and then it suddenly starts becoming a whole lot more serious.
Yeah.
And that's where which I think it's a real sort of credit to Fincher, the fact that he's able to played off like, oh yeah, the game doesn't exist. This is all just a scam to steal money off the rich.
But I think that's the thing. It's all these smoke and mirrors that they create, and it makes this kind of like effect of like you said, it very much like goes on the line of morals and how much you're going to put someone through this, and how much they're going to pull through, and it feels like CRS has all these things all calculated, and that's kind of like the part that is the most, I think, I guess, unbelievable in a certain way. It feels almost like the game itself is that they've already calculated like the probability of each thing that he's gonna do, and they've already planned like a step or two before him. And obviously, you were talking about morals before, and I mean, like, it kind of goes on this thing where like Van Horten has this issue where we really feel like at the beginning he kind of maybe lacks a bit of those morals, and it's kind of like a negative becomes a positive deal.
But I think that's where the testing comes in. Like nowadays, they would say that Google, like everybody, now you dump all your information to Google or search engine or something online, and they're saying Google can predict your next move before you can predict your next move. There's a pattern of everything you've been doing for the last 3-4 years. So again, I think that goes back to the testing, and they figure out, if you have 3 choices, which way you would go based on how you answered those questions. Mm-hmm. But also on that rooftop scene, they do kind of tell you they have contingencies for if you don't go where they expected to go to lead you back in the right direction. They talk about there was a diver in the water in case you couldn't get out of the car.
Yeah.
Talk about if you didn't jump, I was supposed to push you off. So there are. If he doesn't do A, there's a B and C backup plan. So they do kind of mention that in the end.
Yeah.
They say they do everything, but they can kind of lead you where they want you to go.
Yeah, I just love the fact that he just never knows who he can trust. You think that he thinks he's found an ally, and then it turns out that no, they're also part of the game. And when he starts like realizing that he's walked onto rooms that are actually just sets, such as when he goes to the waitress's apartment and he's like going through the bookcase and it's like all fake. It's all fake and the drawers are empty, the fridge is empty, and it's like been made to look like this apartment where this woman's living. I just thought that scene in particular was really, really, really great. And I think it just also helps.
That's the best scene in the movie for me. When he goes fake, pulls the books down, and they're all together and they're half books. Like that is the best scene of the movie.
Yeah, no, because that was like the turning point, right? It was that point that you knew that this game was more than what we've seen just now. It's not just a chase down someone. It's really like all planned out. Everything is calculated to a T. They know exactly where he's gonna go, and it's all to bluff him.
Definitely, and I think this is the benefit of having an actor like Michael Douglas on your cast, because he just sells every single twist. Like, when we need him to be like in the position of power, he's doing that. If we need him to be in someone who's losing control, he can do that. He's just so versatile in the role, and it's what you need. You can't just have one actor who can play just one type. You need that sort of everyman actor who can play the many different sort of phases, so that we like totally buy into it. And I mean, he's such a despicable character, Nicholas is. The fact he's so unlikable, he's so wrapped up in his own self-centeredness, and the fact that we can get to see him at his lowest point and still feel compassion for this guy. Like, you just want him to get a break by the end, and it's sort of, I just thought that was just like so fantastic. Even if the end sort of feels like a little extreme of the end game, so
no kidding.
So yeah, I mean, just talking about, I want to go back to Sean Penn's character now. The character originally was going to be a daughter character, so it was going to be Nicholas's daughter, and she was going to be played by Jodie Foster. Now, because of the age difference between Foster and Michael Douglas is about 9 years, they thought it was a bit strange, so they reworked the script so that she became his sister. And ultimately, there was some issues with with the production. She went off to do Contact, and then they were in talks with Jeff Bridges to take on the role, which would have been interesting, but it's a little more harder to see him as sort of the black sheep, which Sean Penn obviously really sort of embodies here. Because, I mean, with Conrad, did you get the purpose that he's like a screw up, or where do we sort of come in for it? Because obviously he's very sort of key to the game working initially, and he does sort of also play that sort of key role at the end, with being responsible for the whole thing coming together. So how do we sort of like rate that sort of character and what he brings to things?
I think he was kind of he's the typical trust fund kid. He's second son. He's got nothing to do. He has a big trust fund, can do whatever he wants to do in the world, never has to work. I was thinking along the lines, did you guys ever see a movie called Sabrina with Harrison Ford and Greg Kinnear?
I've seen it, I just can't remember it. So
Greg Kinnear is kind of in the Sean Penn role.
Okay.
He's the younger, irresponsible, doing whatever he wants, where Harrison Ford is a responsible one. But there is a trace that if he had to step up, he could. And so I had that thought as well as I'm watching this, that, no, he knows what he's doing. When he has to do something, he can. But because Big Brother's doing everything, he just kind of steps back. But he is a screw-up, though. He has drug issues. He's running around the world. He's always needing something. He's always late. He wants to smoke in the restaurant. Like, exactly that role. He's the screw-up.
Yeah. I found him very similar to my own brother. I don't know, when I watch it, it's sort of like, because my brother's sort of like just out there in the world doing his own thing, and I was always having to be like the responsible one, so. And yeah. And now he makes some money for doing very little.
Michael Douglas' character holding Conrad as a baby, right? So they do show that they're not apart. They're a good distance apart as well.
Yeah, those flashback sequences. I don't know what anyone else thought, but there was an underlying sort of creepiness, almost sadness to what we see in those sort of flashback sequences. I mean, his father seems really sort of distant, even though we're told the complete opposite by the housemaid, that his father was always, just very sort of aloof, but he was never, no one got the sort of impression he was going to go and throw himself off the roof. But there's just something really sad about those home movie flashback sequences that we see scattered throughout the film. I just found every time we saw one of them, it just seemed like a very sort of sad childhood that he'd come up with.
I think it was just, we're watching it from a third person perspective. So there's a lot of like, the idea is that we can see that his father is not is very distant and feels like something's a bit off with him, and how he obviously commits suicide, but then at the same time we also hear all of these things, like the housemaid talk about it and whatnot, that they don't notice these signs, and it's probably because these people are so close to him. Maybe it's to make Nicholas Van Orton feel a bit better about the situation. Maybe it's just, lack of communication. I don't know what it is. But I mean, like, we're never clear on the father's position on this whole thing. But the flashbacks is kind of like to reinforce kind of like maybe this like possibility of where he will end up if he turns like his father. Because obviously he's becoming quite distant with the people around him also. Like, he kind of like doesn't talk to, like, kind of like just... he kind of just tries like to have a conversation with the ex-wife, but he doesn't really seem like he wants to have that conversation. And it's like a lot of people are trying to keep in contact with him, but he is always like stepping back or like having some kind of distance between everybody too.
Yeah, I find those kind of show that he lost his childhood.
Yeah.
The minute his dad lost that roof, he lost his childhood. He's here to take care of his brother now. He's the man of the house. They don't really talk about the mother a lot, but I'm expecting she was on pills now after a while after this whole thing occurred. So he had to be responsible at a very young age, and I think that reflects in what he eats. So he's having hamburgers. He has the housemaid do the sandwich and cut off all the corners from like his little kid of French fries. I think he's kind of stuck as a kind of a Michael Jackson type thing, maybe even, where no childhood is gone. And I think that's what that's showing. His childhood kind of ended, and that's what those flashbacks. I think it was a birthday party for him, I want to think, and his dad jumped off the roof right after that, and that was the end of his childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's. I mean, just that whole like lonely birthday he spends by himself, though. It really sort of gives you. I think that's what the one shot which really sort of tells you the most about this character, the life he's choosing to live. I mean, the only sort of contact he has on his birthday is the phone call from his ex-wife, whose relationship to him is kind of confusing. I wasn't sure if she's like still holds a bit of a torch for him, or whether she's just trying to keep things on friendly terms, because she's very clearly moved on with her life. I mean, she's got a daughter, and she's got a new husband, and this whole other life away from him, yet she still chooses to call him on his birthday. So
I'm not sure if that daughter is not Nikki's daughter, though. I know the new baby, she's pregnant. I knew that the new one isn't, but I'm not sure if the older one is his or not.
Yeah, because I know obviously it's that, but again with that whole sort of sequence. I mean, even he comes home from work, and what he chooses to do at home and his little downtime is just to do more work. Work seems to be his only thing he has in his life as well. It's, as good as
but
that.
I really feel like the whole purpose of the ex-wife and that call was to show that he's being distant and that he's very lonely in his life. Like, there's really, like you said, there's really just work in his life, and that's why the game is so important to him. Like, the best gift that he could get for someone like him is to have something that changes that routine, and something that really, like, I guess, not take the people around him for granted. Instead of like pushing them all away, he embraces these people who are trying to build or maintain relationships around him that he seems to just not care too much about.
Yeah. Obviously, speaking of relationships, the waitress played here by Deborah Carla Unger, I think is one of the most important relationships that he has for the large portion of the film. Her audition for the role of Christine, though, was a test reel consisting of the 2-minute sex scene from David Cronenberg's Crash, which Michael Douglas thought was a joke, but when him and Fincher met her in person, they were so impressed by their acting, she got cast in the role, and the two have really good chemistry. And I have to say that her character arc in the film is probably one I didn't see coming. Even though I've seen the film before, I was still surprised when the tables are turned and we get that twist involving her character. I think that came completely out of nowhere. I was really, really surprised that this person you think you can trust, who's like giving you all this information, and that is the one who's going to ultimately stab you in the back, or in this case, stab you in the front. So. But what did
I've seen it.
Yeah, please go on.
Kind of things kind of twist again at the cottage, right? Like at the house, you get the impression, okay, she's on his side. She sees he's falling apart. She's going to help him, right? Try and give him information to help him. But at the cottage, when she drugs him, then okay, no, she really is bad. That type of thing. It's kind of the thought you're having at that point.
And it does also lead to a great bit of improv by Douglas later on when he has the meeting with his ex-wife. And then the diner, and the waitress brings him the bottle of water with the glass. And he just like completely freaks out. It's like, no, who opened this bottle of water? I want an unopened bottle of water. I don't want a glass with any ice in it. And I thought that was such a great throwback and just a wonderful bit of improv on Douglas's part. The fact that he acknowledged what this character had been through previously, and the fact that they probably wouldn't be too trusting of anyone offering them a drink in a later scene. So, I mean, the original ending of this, she was the ending of the original script is kind of weird, and it kind of loses the point here. Is at the end he shoots Christine and then commits suicide, which really means that the game's kind of for naught. So, as extreme as the ending is, how do we feel about the big swan dive into reality? Okay.
I think it really is like, at this point, you're having this moment of who to believe, right? Because by the end, you're so absorbed into this game that what part of it is a game and what part of it is reality. Even when he walks into this room, right, and he sees all these people that he's met along this entire game experience that he's had, and they're all sitting there in a cafeteria. And then you're just like, well, if you were in his spot, you'd be like, well, what is this crap going on? Like, I've just been messed up by everybody to no extremes. And then it's hard for him to believe what Christine is saying at that point. That this is, that this is whatever. And then that this is just, everything was planned, and, that whoever is behind, that Conrad is behind the door or whatever. And then it's just a big mess of a situation, and then he kind of like, and then obviously he shoots, and then it's his gun, and then you have to believe whether it's all real or not, and then you kind of get really wrapped up as he dives down, and that's like the big finale, right? You see all these people down there, and you're like, okay, well, is this real or not? kind of thing. It was kind of like the whole game's end game was to have him live through kind of like that his father's 48, like when he was 48 and he committed suicide, and it kind of like it felt like it was to get it out of his system kind of thing.
Yeah,
I felt Deborah Unger was very good in several instances of keeping the audience offbeat.
Yeah.
As I said before, at the cottage scene, then when she kind of takes his side at the house scene, saying that everyone's listening, and then in the end when she talks about the gun.
Yeah.
Like, where did you get the gun? Where did that gun come from? We didn't have the gun. You get it from security guard. It doesn't look like it. It's my gun. That whole thing.
Yeah.
She kind of bring it. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, she was kind of like the glue, right? She was the piece of the puzzle in this game, which was really just she controlled the game in a certain way, where she was doing all the misdirections that you needed for Michael Douglas's character to feel like the game was going a certain way. And it was crazy because throughout this whole thing, they would be playing with his trust at the different levels towards her, and kind of like coercing him to do certain moves and making him believe certain things.
Yeah. There's a couple of scenes, obviously, just to touch on scenes you mentioned there. When we obviously have him do the big swan dive, and he lands on the big air mat, and we go into the actual sort of final party scene. It should be noted the paramedic who is sweeping the fake glass off Michael Douglas' face is Spike Jonze, in a fun little cameo there. Also, I loved when they are showing the party and they have like the invitation. I was so wanted it to say that that Nicholas will be dropping in at this time. But sadly, he didn't do that because he's a more reserved filmmaker than I am, clearly.
Well, it does say that. Invite says sometimes between like 8 and 8:30, they give a window, right?
Oh yeah, they got a window, but I wanted it to say that he will be dropping in.
Okay.
So, because obviously he falls in through the big skylight, so I thought that would be a fun play on things. So. But the whole cafeteria scene, I mean, you already said Norman, that you liked the apartment sequence. But for myself, the cafeteria scene is like my favourite shot of the whole film. It's just the fact you see all these characters we've encountered before, and we now know who's been in on the game. When I actually worked in the airport, I actually convinced a couple of passengers that we had a similar thing at the airport, because whenever you go to the airport, you see people you won't see anywhere else, and you see like those people buy those awful airport T-shirts, with like the big maple leaf that says Canada and stuff on it. I used to say like those big warehouses are just like big warehouses where they have like actors in for like costuming, and we just put them in the airport for character. So there's a bunch of people probably wandering around Birmingham Airport who think that the game actually is existing just at Birmingham Airport. But yeah, I'm just trying to think. Obviously, should we talk a bit about trademarks here? Because obviously we open with a very unique opening sequence. This time, before in 7, we obviously had the notebooks. This time we got puzzle pieces. I have to say, so far, all the 3 Fincher openings of, Alien 3, 7, and the game, I mean, do you have a personal favourite so far with these openings? Because I always find the game one really trippy to look at.
I don't know. I mean, I found the game was rather subtle, if you talked about just context itself. So, I mean, obviously, if you're talking about, like, context and kind of creating the moment a lot, I think 7 definitely is the most powerful out of the 3 so far. Whereas, I mean, Alien 3 isn't bad. It kind of like, the purpose is in the opening sequence. I mean, we talked about it in the episode before, was really to bridge the second movie to the third movie. Yeah. And so that one had kind of more of a significant story value to it.
Norman, do you have a favourite Fincher opening at all?
I'm thinking. I like the opening of Social Network a lot.
Okay.
I think that's the opening.
Cool. So, let's obviously looking at like the Fincher trademarks here. I mean, here we've obviously got the dark urban setting again. For myself, I mean, this film could very much be set in the same city as 7. We're just obviously now in the upper part of it, whereas with 7 we're sort of in the lower sort of part. So here we're sort of more in the financial district. Fincher fought for them to shoot in San Francisco. The studio wanted LA, which was a cheaper option, but Fincher won out on this one again with the star power Michael Douglas backing him. So but even though, I mean, obviously 7 was shot in an unnamed city, this one's obviously very clearly San Francisco, and Zodiac again is San Francisco. So, I mean, for yourself, do you also feel that like 7 and this film could take place in the same city, or do you think they're very sort of different cities that the films take place in?
Well, I like that this one's San Francisco. I think 7 plays well, but it's nameless, actually. It's a nameless spot, because the main villain's a nameless kind of guy, right? So I think that kind of goes together well. I like the San Francisco vibe, and even the first scene when he's kind of driving to work and going down the hill, you know it's San Francisco. And I even had a thought to Michael Douglas being in the TV show Streets of San Francisco. So I kind of like that kind of dichotomy as well. So I thought it plays well.
Yeah, it's also fun the fact that we obviously, the more sort of broken down that Nicholas gets, the further into the scummier parts of the city that he goes. I mean, he starts off obviously in the high rises and the limos and where the money is, and then as he goes on, he sort of like ends up right down in sort of like the docks and these sort of broken down urban areas. So it very much, the city in many ways reflects his sort of mental state, I found throughout, and the fact that he ends up in Mexico when he's absolute destitute and just like on the absolute poverty line is, again, it just seemed like a perfect sort of representation for where he is, because he sort of blends in so much with these people that he may have initially sort of looked down on as we look at him at the start of the film.
And another good Fincher point, too, is how he dresses people to match the set. When he's uptown, he's in the darker colors. His colors tend to slowly get lighter and lighter. And then on the bottom in Mexico, he wakes up in a cemetery where everything is white and he's dressed in white.
Yeah.
So he kind of lighter and he's going down. And of course, San Francisco is kind of a downward city, so that all kind of is on a downward spiral, I guess, which matches the hilly downward hills of San Francisco.
Good point.
Yeah. I have to say that when it came to like the light in here, I was surprised that he kept his usual blue tint just for the one sequence, which is when we see his mansion, which is being covered in graffiti, and we see it all with the black light. That's the only sort of use of the blue tint that we really get here. The rest of it's very much in shadow, and especially the CRS agents, which I thought were particularly great. The fact that these shadowy agents are just shot in shadow. We never actually see their faces. They're like almost like silhouettes the way he shoots them, which I thought was just like a really great touch.
I actually think the blue tint was used in multiple places, but it was very subtle that you would not be able to notice it. Because I remember there was one sequence that it popped out particularly, and it wasn't the blue light sequence. It was something else. I just can't remember what it is anymore.
Yeah. That's the other part that when we were questioning like how far they took it. They graffiti the inside of this guy's mansion and pretty much trash it. It's sort of like, that's going to cost an absolute fortune to get it redone. It's like, it's not really so much a game at that point. It's just like, that would just drive me insane. Just like have someone come in and like redecorate my house with graffiti.
Oh no, the blue tint room was in when he goes to the hotel and there's like all of that, the sex tapes and the pictures and all that stuff. That was in like really blue tint, but then it was contrasted with like a bit of the light and the glare there.
A lot of grays, like when he goes into the CRS office, a lot of grays and that section, kind of a high-tech type look for there, as opposed to the deep browns and blacks in his, kind of corporate office setting, and in the club as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else that we haven't touched upon here.
I got a question.
Yes, please.
When does everybody think the game actually... What was the first point when the game starts?
The first point when the game starts for me is when he receives the call that he's been rejected.
Yeah. I would say the same, Kim, and it seems like an obvious trigger. I mean, obviously the more obvious one would be like the discovery of the clown, and when they start initially sort of messing with him by having like the TV announcers start talking to him. Which, again, you really got to question the intelligence of a man who's trying to dismantle his TV with a knife. But at least they bothered to point out, that's not such a smart idea. But, oh my God.
I think it's in the club. When he's told he's not in the game, okay, maybe he didn't get in the game, and then he's in the club, and these two guys in just are talking about how great this game is.
Yeah.
You're right, because those two guys that were there, I think one of them was in the cafeteria.
I think
they're
both
in the cafeteria.
Yeah, they were both in the cafeteria. Yeah.
Sits with them, and he doesn't even know them. These are his buddies, but then they say, nice to meet you. He doesn't even know who these guys are. It just shows you how kind of solitary, and he doesn't even have any friends at this club he goes to all the time. So, and they're like, nice to meet you. Like, he doesn't even know. The only guy he knows is the guy behind the bar who's serving the drinks.
Yeah, because he's there playing squash by himself. He doesn't... He has no like squash partner, and as you said, he just does everything by himself. I mean, he has a shower in his office, so that he can just like constantly just keep working. I was surprised by the romantic angle at the end, though. I have to say that it was weird. It should feel forced, but for some reason I was kind of accepting, because it felt like almost like a reward for him becoming this new man. And I know that obviously Conrad says that, I did this because you were becoming too much of an intolerable ass, which is justifiable enough. And it just felt kind of, for some reason, just him and Christine getting together at the end just seemed like although it came kind of like left field and a little forced in many ways, for some reason I just really accepted it. So I don't know if anyone else thought their sort of romantic angle at the end was forced or not. I mean,
but that's not where the movie is supposed to end, though. Michael Douglas wanted it to end when he falls off and the applause. He wanted to end right there. He didn't want the whole party and wanted it to end at that point, but others won out and went through this kind of extra steps.
Yeah.
But I did like the bill part, though, when Carmen's looking at paying the bill. And then he goes, "You want to split it?" He goes, "Oh, yes. Oh, please, please, please."
But it's so nice because they don't show you the bill, right? So you have this like idea, you're trying to guess what this astronomical number is going to be.
Well, you look at the size of the bill, though. It's like
I know, it's like a booklet.
Yeah, so it's probably like $150,000 for that thing, which is again why it's such a crew that is able to do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, the fact is, I mean, the company they own a whole building, and they shift their offices on floors like it would seem like on a daily basis, which is no easy feat. And I love that if you actually sit down and try and figure out how the game works, it constantly just like gives you it constantly gives you the thing. It's like everything's almost worked out. There's no like leaps in logic or faith. Everything seems to have been catered for, and that's why I love just even when you start like getting into the sort of mechanics of the game, it's just so perfectly worked out for something that often seems to be making up as it goes. So
yeah, but I mean, because this goes back to like the first things we were talking about, and Norma made a good point about all this is planned out with contingency plans, and it's to make it feel obviously natural, and it's based on obviously all the tests that he did in the beginning at the CRS.
And also all the little hints, like watching it this time, the first time ever I noticed, when he goes to Christine's house, there's a van parked out front where those guys come out, get out and shoot, and that says CRS.
Yeah.
In the cab it says CRS. Like there's all sorts of little hints and clues of CRS all the way along. So
yeah.
I found kind of noticed all those on this watch, all the little subtle places where CRS.
Cool. Matt, anything else that anyone wants to bring up at all?
I was just looking at IMDb, and I just noticed that Nicholas's father is played by Charles Martinet, which is the guy who voices Mario and Luigi and stuff. So I think that's an interesting
Mario and Wario, isn't
it? I just thought that was an interesting little point.
Because I'm right in thinking you've met him, Kim?
Yeah, I went to a Q&A at Montreal Comic Con.
So I just looked at the guy's IMDb, and it is just Mario.
What?
It's all
Mario, Wario, Luigi.
I want to bring up is that this was supposed to have been Fincher's first movie. He had just written and ready to go, but then Brad Pitt came available to do 7, so he did 7 first.
Yeah.
So this was the first one he was going to do.
Well, yeah, I mean, the advantage of, obviously, the fact he did 7 before this one is it meant that he could then get a bigger budget for the game. And I think this is a film which really benefits from having a decent budget behind it. I would hate to have seen the game shot on a budget. Because there's so many elaborate shots in this, and just the scale of this game that's being played here. I mean, it's not like you can... With 7, you can obviously work around the budget because of the locations and how that film is shot. But with the game, I mean, there's so many like elaborate sort of stunt works that's going to be put in. There's action sequences. There's that whole scene with like the dumpster dive, which actually fell into a dumpster with real rats in, fracturing her ankle. So real credit to her for that one.
Yeah, but I mean, like, think about it. You're trying to film an elite high society game on a low budget. I don't think that kind of works. It would have been real weird and not very convincing, I would think.
Yeah, definitely not.
No, I I'm wondering if Michael Douglas would have done it too without Seven having been out there before.
It's always hard to say because I mean, he signed up to do Traffic just because his wife Catherine Zeta-Jones basically passed him the script over breakfast. That's how he got involved in Traffic. So you're never sure what way he goes because he does a lot of indie films as well. So, but I think the buzz that was surrounding Fincher after Seven, I think, certainly opened a lot of doors to him. It gave him more sort of clout with the studio that, you know, he could be left to do his own thing. And I think when Seven came out, I think he was this sort of director that everyone suddenly wanted to work with. So, and especially when you consider the fact that he had Jodie Foster and Michael Douglas potentially appearing in his third film, two absolute heavyweights of acting. So, although I'm kind of glad that he didn't use Jodie Foster as much as I love Jodie Foster, I don't think she would have been. She wouldn't have been as good in the Sean Penn role.
Yeah, you wouldn't have believed her as much as a screw up. I don't think. Has she ever played a screw up?
I really think, you know, Jodie Foster is kind of like that character who her acting style is very similar to Michael Douglas, where it's just like a lot of panic. So she's really good in, like, say, you know, Panic Room. But as like a Sean Penn, you know, like a screw up character, I really don't see her doing that. I feel like she's more of like she's either a very contained character or she's a very nervous and agitated type of character.
Yeah, I think she's take control more, like in Contact or even in Inside Job. What movie is that? That Spike Lee one. Like she's the first one to say that's above your pay grade. That was her. I think Inside Job. It was Inside Man. But anyway, she said that phrase first in the movie. That's above your pay grade.
Mm-hmm.
I would see her as being in control all the time.
Yeah, but then I mean, she's done other, like, obvious. She's a little bit more like, you know, in the Miss role, so I can kind of see her kind of like in this kind of like Michael Douglas character. But I don't know. I mean, the point is, I really don't see her as this, you know, the black sheep kind of character.
She's older than Sean Penn, then? Is she really older than Sean Penn? I didn't know she was older than Sean Penn.
I'm trying to think when Sean Penn sort of really came onto the scene now. Now I was suddenly like just Googling rapidly. It's like how old Sean Penn is. I know that Sean Penn's the reason Nicolas Cage changed his name to Nicolas Cage. Because he was Nicky Coppola before. And Sean Penn was basically riding him on, I think it was on Valley Girl or something like that, about his connection to Coppola, so he changed his name to Nick Cage, thinking it was tougher. Yeah, anything else, Toby, or happy with that?
No, I think we're ready for further viewing.
Cool. Yeah, so further viewing, what do we pair with this one if we obviously like this one?
Well, as I said before, I think I'd pair Sabrina with it, where you have the older younger brother dynamic, just kind of a girl in the middle, but still, I think that was my first thought of watching it. I'd pair it with Sabrina.
Yeah. No, that's not a bad choice. For me, I actually went a little bit more recent, and I went into something kind of like a game that kind of like breaks game and reality into the center, and I chose Escape Room. It's not a great movie, but it kind of matches well with this kind of like this movie.
Cool. There's also a DTV movie called Escape Room as well, which is awful. So really make sure you get the good one. For myself, I've actually got a couple, so I'm just going to quickly run through these. First off is Don't Say a Word. It's another Michael Douglas thriller, who plays a psychiatrist who has to break through this patient's sort of mental wall to discover a secret that apparently she only knows. Also has the wonderful Brittany Murphy in it, and it's a film that I was surprised didn't get more of a buzz when it came out. It sort of came and disappeared, but it's a really interesting thriller. The one I would also add onto that list would be Shutter Island, which Scorsese. Leonardo DiCaprio is a U.S. Marshal investigating a disappearing patient from a mental hospital. This is a film that really plays out just as well when you watch it the second time and start questioning why characters are acting the way that they are. It's a really great one to dissect. And also on the paranoia side of things, I would recommend The Machinist from 2004, which memorably features Christian Bale losing a lot of weight as he becomes a human skeleton, playing a lathe operator who is slowly being killed by insomnia as he troubles to discover the source of why he can't sleep. It's a really sort of haunting sort of film, and one that really has a really good payoff at the end, and features an absolute stand-up performance by Christian Bale, who once again shows himself more than willing to go the distance when it comes to getting into characters. But those would be my personal picks for that one. And this obviously brings us into another episode. Thank you as always for listening. And Norman, thank you for obviously coming on and discussing the game with us.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime. You're picking very good directors, so it's always good.
And if people want to obviously come and find out more of your wares, where's the best place to come and find you?
Well, my movie blog, which is a little quiet right now because there's not many movies to go out and see, but Flickhunter, flickhunter.blogspot.com, and on Twitter you can find me at McStay12.
Fantastic. And Kim, where are we going to next?
Wait. I lost my tab. Wait.
Sorry. Can we just buy you some time?
It's okay. I got it. It's here. Okay, so after this, we're heading to 2 years later in 1999 and Fight Club.
Yeah, Fight Club, a film which initially failed on its release in the cinemas, only to find strong word of mouth following on VHS. Since then, turning into an essential cult classic as both critics and audiences reassess their opinion, featuring incredible performances by both Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, as well as Helena Bonham Carter, and let's not forget a very interesting cameo by Meatloaf. But all that's to discuss on our next episode. As always, you can check out our full archive of episodes at moviesandteapodcast.wordpress.com. You can also, wherever you happen to be listening to us, maybe leave us a like or a review, or leave us a rating. It all helps with the promotion of the show. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we are also on Instagram as well. So come and hang out with us there and let us know what you think of the show and the films we've been discussing. But thank you as always for listening. Thank you to my co-host Kim, and thank you to Norman from Flickhunter for joining us, and we'll be back next time to discuss Fight Club. Good night.